$513 billion. That's how much money women lose every year due to the gender pay gap. This is coming from an article titled "Women Lose $513 billion a Year in Wages Due to Gender Pay Gap, and Math is Worse for Some" by Sharice Jones in 2018. The gender pay gap is nothing new, and it will take effort to close this gap. All of you, both men and women, will be soon going into the workforce, and this information will be useful to you because it'll help you ensure that everyone can be paid a fair wage. As a male in a predominantly male department at my job, I don't directly see the negative effects of the gender pay gap. This is why in this speech, I will lean hard on the information that I will cite later in the speech to ensure that I get you the proper information without bias. Over the next few minutes, I'll talk about the history of the gender pay gap, the current state of the gender pay gap, and what can be done to close the gap. First, let's talk about the history of the gender pay gap. According to an article titled "Here's the History of the Battle for Equal Pay for American Women" by Charlotte Alter in 2015, the U.S. House passed a bill in 1869 that promised equal pay for governmental workers in the Treasury. Women, quote, made only half as much as male colleagues. This bill, however, was, quote, watered down by the time it reached the Senate the next year. The next point that the article makes is that women took the positions that men held during World War II and World War I. And it was argued that these women should be paid the same as the men were in these jobs. So this was one of the biggest things that worked towards equal pay for women, in that women who took these jobs during the World Wars were paid equally to the men who had the jobs before. Finally, the article by Alter mentions the Equal Pay Law, which was passed in 1963. And it was the first nationwide law dealing with equal pay for women. Now that we've discussed the history of the gender pay gap, let's move to the current state of the gender pay gap. In an article titled "Gender Wage Gap" by Amira Damaj, 2017, women, quote, in the United States in 2012, women working full-time were paid 23% less than men. The article gives several reasons for this discrepancy, including the way society views men versus women. This leads to a couple of terms mentioned in the article, quote, glass ceilings and, quote, glass walls. Glass ceilings refers to the fact that most high-paying jobs in the United States are held by men, whereas the majority of low-paying jobs in the United States are held by women. The term glass walls refers to the fact of the stigmas around jobs in the United States, such as the fact that women are more seen in society to go into professions such as healthcare and education, whereas it seems more of a, quote, man's job to go into fields such as engineering and science. But this isn't the only the only thing that leads to this discrepancy in pay. This is also caused by discrimination. This is women being paid less than a man for doing the same job when the woman has the same amount of experience. Since employers set wage rates for whoever they want at whatever they see fit, this opens the door for direct discrimination, and it's, quote, direct discrimination from the article. Since employers can set these wages, they can directly discriminate against women and pay them less than a man for doing the same job when they have the same experience, even though this is illegal and it's prohibited by law. Third, now that we've covered the history of the gender pay gap and the current gender pay gap, let's talk about what can be done to close it. In a book titled "The Gender Wage Gap" by Melissa Higgins and Michael Reagan in 2017, solving the gender pay gap will take action from businesses, schools, governments, and by women themselves. Several things were put forth by the book to solve this gap, several ideas, including opening wage information to everyone so everyone can see what other people are making and ensure that what they're making is fair comparatively. Another thing mentioned is motivating women to get into higher paying fields and getting education to go into those fields, such as fields in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, which would help close the gap because you'd be getting women into higher paying fields. A third thing recommended by the book is to increase the minimum wage to $12 an hour. This works twofold in that it increases the wages for women because the majority of these lower paying jobs that would see this raise are held by women. But not only would this help out women, it would help everyone making less than $12 an hour. So now that we've talked about all of these things, it proves that the gender pay gap has been in effect for a long time, and it's better than it was, but it still needs work to be corrected. Over the past few minutes, I've spoken about the history of the gender wage gap, the current gender wage gap, and the things that can be done to close the gap. I hope that everyone in this room can take this information into the workforce and use it to ensure that everyone makes a fair wage. Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech titled "I Have a Dream," where he mentioned that he hoped his children would be judged not on the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. It seems as though it's time for employers to judge applicants based not on the content of their 23rd chromosome, but judge them by their ability to do the job for which they are applying. Thank you.